Out of all the wounds I've carried, the ones my siblings gave me are the ones that never fully closed. No one warns you that sometimes the people who shared your toys, your secrets, your childhood dreams will one day become strangers, or worse, your enemies. There's a different kind of heartbreak that comes not from lovers or friends, but from blood, from brothers and sisters who were supposed to stand beside you in life's storms, yet chose to walk away, or worse, to push you deeper into the rain. We are taught to forgive, to keep peace, to let it go, because family is everything. But what if that family is the very source of your lifelong ache? What if some betrayals aren't meant to be forgiven, but understood? When people think about betrayal, they often picture heartbreak from a partner, or deception from a friend. But there's another kind of betrayal, quieter, more invisible, but far more personal. The betrayal of a sibling. It could be the brother who cut you out of an inheritance with a smile on his face, or the sister who exposed your vulnerabilities in front of people you trusted. Maybe it's the years of silence that turned into decades, and then regret. And yet, most people don't talk about this kind of pain, because it's family, and we're supposed to keep quiet, supposed to pretend nothing happened, supposed to show up for birthdays, weddings, funerals, and smile like we weren't broken behind closed doors. But here's the truth. Stoicism doesn't ask us to pretend pain doesn't exist. It teaches us to face it head on, to name it, to own it, and most importantly, to choose our response, not be consumed by theirs. This video isn't just about grief or anger. It's about reclaiming your peace when people you loved, people who shared your blood, took it away. It's about rebuilding your strength without needing their apology. It's about finally choosing yourself. Here, through real stories and timeless Stoic wisdom, we'll explore the betrayals that happen behind family doors, the ones no one talks about, and we'll learn how to rise, not in spite of them, but because of them. If this speaks to a quiet part of you, a part that's tired of holding pain in silence, tired of pretending you're over it, then you've come to the right place. Subscribe to the Stoic philosophy. This channel exists for people like you, people who have lived through heartbreak, endured betrayal, and are ready to choose something higher, a stronger mind, a calmer heart, and a life of true inner peace. Because life won't always be fair, but you can always be free. There's a moment, quiet, unassuming, when something shifts between you and a sibling. It could be during a conversation that ends just a little too cold, a promise broken, a choice made without you. Maybe it's an insult dressed as a joke, or perhaps it's that family meeting where everyone looked away while your voice trembled. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. That's just how he is. She's always been dramatic. We're family, it'll pass. But time does something cruel. It doesn't always heal. Sometimes it hardens. The silence stretches longer. The glances grow colder. And suddenly the person who once defended you on the school bus or snuck candy into your room now looks at you like a stranger at the Thanksgiving table. This is the kind of betrayal that hides beneath the surface. No one talks about it, not at church, not in therapy, not even in grief, because we were raised on myths. Blood is thicker than water. But we forgot the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. In truth, shared DNA doesn't guarantee shared love, loyalty, or respect. And yet, when that betrayal comes from a brother who turns the will into a weapon, or a sister who uses your past against you, you don't just lose a sibling. You lose a piece of your own story. You lose the witness to your childhood, the co-author of your memories, the one who knew what mom's voice sounded like when she was mad, or how dad's face softened when no one was watching. Their betrayal feels like a revision of history, like your memories were stolen and rewritten. Worse still, there's shame in speaking about it. You hear things like, "Get over it, it's been years. You only have one family. She's your sister, call her." But what do you do when reconciliation is impossible? When the apology never comes? When even trying to talk opens old wounds that never fully closed? This is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes survival. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be." But how do you choose not to be harmed when the betrayal came from someone who once held your hand across the street? When the wound isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. The Stoics didn't teach us to ignore pain. They taught us to separate what is within our control from what is not. We cannot control the betrayal. We cannot rewrite their choices, but we can choose how long we carry them. This is the hidden challenge no one prepares you for: to mourn a sibling who is still alive, to bury a relationship that never got closure, to walk into family gatherings knowing the air between you is heavy and might never clear, and yet you're still here, still standing, still capable of living a full life, not free from pain but free from letting it define you. This video is not about blaming or seeking justice. It's about truth. The truth that some betrayals change the trajectory of your life, and that's okay. You are not weak for feeling hurt. You are not bitter for remembering. You are human, and you are healing. Let's talk about the betrayals we were never supposed to name, so we can finally put them down and walk forward with something stronger than blood: clarity, wisdom, and peace. The quiet scars that shape us. When betrayal comes from a sibling, it often doesn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It comes quietly, in the form of silence, distance, or manipulation cloaked in smiles. And over the years, it turns into something harder to name: grief without death, anger without closure. This section explores 5 distinct kinds of betrayals that older adults often carry deep within them. Betrayals that aren't just about what was done, but what was lost: trust, connection, memory, and meaning. Each part tells a different story, grounded in real emotional patterns observed in families across decades, then reframed through Stoic wisdom. These are not just stories of pain, but of how individuals rise above it with dignity, clarity, and peace. Part 1: The inheritance that wasn't just money. James was 62 when his mother passed away. The funeral was small, quiet, dignified. His older brother Richard gave the eulogy, a beautiful speech, elegant, thoughtful, and just the right amount of emotion. But James couldn't focus on the words. His mind kept returning to something else, a feeling, really, a whisper that had been growing louder since the hospice room: his mother's house, the house they grew up in, the house with the squeaky stair, the cracked window in the attic, and the porch where they used to sit eating popsicles in summer. She had promised him, on more than one occasion, that after she was gone, the house would be his. Richard had already built his career. James had stayed close, cared for their mother, drove her to her doctor's appointments, managed her medications. He didn't expect money. He didn't ask for credit. All he hoped for was that tiny piece of continuity, a home filled with memory, something to tether him to a past that already felt like smoke. 2 weeks later, he received a call from the family lawyer. Richard had produced a signed amendment to the will, one that left the house entirely to himself. James never saw her sign it. There was no conversation, no explanation, just silence. And then the locked gate. This betrayal wasn't just about the property. It was about memory, about trust, about love that was supposed to live beyond the grave. For months, James couldn't sleep. He obsessed over emails, documents, timelines. He started reliving every minor slight from childhood. Every moment Richard had taken more than his share. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was slow, like erosion. One day, a friend handed him a book on Stoic philosophy. He flipped through it idly until a single line by Epictetus stopped him cold. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. At first, the idea sounded hollow. What did Epictetus know about a stolen house? A betrayal by your own brother? But as the days passed, something shifted. James began to realize the truth of those words. He could not change the past. The will was done. The house was gone. But the bitterness, the fixation, the daily spiral into anger and grief, that was his. And maybe, just maybe, that meant he could put it down. Stoicism doesn't tell us not to feel the sting of betrayal. It tells us that no possession, not even a house full of childhood laughter, is truly ours. Everything we own is on loan from fortune, even the people we love, even the fairness we expect. What we do own, the Stoics say, is our character, our choices, our judgment. James began to rebuild, not a home, but a life. He moved into a small cottage on the edge of town. He painted. He walked trails his mother once loved. He stopped trying to prove that he deserved the house. He started focusing on being the kind of son she would have been proud of, with or without the deed. He never spoke to Richard again, not out of hatred, but because peace sometimes requires distance. And in that silence, he found something better than justice: freedom. Stoic reflections for those who've been betrayed. Over inheritance. Is it the object we grieve or the story we attach to it? We often attach our worth to what was taken, but the Stoics urge us to examine what we really lost and whether it was ever truly ours to begin with. What can you still control? Not the will, not their lies, not the judgment of others, but your response, your peace, your future. Those are yours. What would your highest self choose to do? Not your angry self, not your grieving self, but the self that chooses virtue, clarity, and inner peace over the endless cycle of resentment. James's story isn't unique. Every year, families fracture over wills, property, keepsakes. But what's truly tragic is not the object lost. It's the years lost to bitterness. And that's where Stoicism becomes not just ancient wisdom, but radical modern freedom. It gives us permission to let go, not because it's easy, but because holding on is even heavier. So if you've been cut out, not just of a will, but of a legacy, remember this: what was taken does not define you. What you build from here, that's yours. Part 2, Chapter of Shadows, When Secrets Become Weapons. Karen was 58 when it happened. She'd spent her whole adult life trying to forget what happened when she was 13. It was a quiet trauma, never spoken aloud, never truly processed. A trusted neighbor, a locked basement door, and a silence that followed her through every season of life. For years, she kept it buried, packed away in the back of her memory like an old photograph, faded, fragile, and too painful to look at. Only one person knew: her sister. They were close once. The kind of sisters who wore each other's clothes, swapped diaries, whispered in the dark when their parents were asleep. Karen trusted her like no one else. She had told her everything, every ugly detail, not for pity, not for validation, but because some truths are too heavy to carry alone. And for decades, her sister held that truth gently until the day she didn't. It was a family dinner, Thanksgiving, a full table, wine flowing, old stories circling the air like ghosts. Then came a sudden silence, a shift in tone. Her sister, half drunk, half smiling, said too casually, "Well, Karen always was fragile. I mean, we all know what happened in that basement, right?" Laughter, confusion, a cousin's eyebrows rising, a fork falling on a plate. Karen froze. That moment, the betrayal, the exposure, wasn't loud. It was slow, acidic, deep. And just like that, the room was no longer warm. It was a battlefield, one where her own blood had handed the enemy a loaded weapon. There are betrayals of action, and then there are betrayals of exposure, the kind where your deepest pain is unwrapped in public, not out of concern, but control, to humiliate, to silence, to dominate the moment. Stoicism doesn't promise that people won't try to hurt you. It promises you can survive it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, it's because they think it's the right thing to do. Blame the misunderstanding, not the man." But Karen didn't want to understand. She wanted to vanish. That night, she left without dessert, without words, without eye contact. The pain wasn't just about the secret. It was about who had broken it, the one person she had trusted. Weeks passed. Apologies never came, just excuses. "It wasn't that serious." "You're overreacting." "I was just being honest." But Karen knew honesty isn't a blade, it's a bridge, and her sister had burned it. So what do you do when your pain becomes someone else's entertainment? When your story, your healing, your survival is reduced to a punchline? The Stoics offer us a choice, not to forget, not to justify, but to reclaim. Reclaim our boundaries, reclaim our dignity, reclaim our silence, not because we are afraid, but because peace is too precious to share with those who weaponize our truth. Karen began journaling. Every morning she wrote one line from Meditations and then responded to it. She didn't write about her sister, she wrote about herself, about resilience, about breathing through pain, about learning to let someone go without hating them. Epictetus taught that people act from ignorance and that their actions do not define our peace unless we give them that power. Karen eventually told her story, not at Thanksgiving, not in front of family, but in a support group for adult survivors. She found something better than closure, agency, and that is the Stoic victory. Not erasing the pain, but transforming it into something stronger than shame. Wisdom. Stoic takeaways for those whose secrets were exposed. You are not what was done to you. You are how you respond. Your story belongs to you. When someone steals it, you reclaim it by telling it on your terms, in your time, with your voice. The wound is not the end of the story. It can be the beginning of a new kind of strength, one forged not in denial, but in the fire of dignity. Guard your peace like a fortress. Not everyone deserves access to your story. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates, and you hold the key. Karen never went back to that Thanksgiving table. She sent a letter instead. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't poetic, just 5 lines. You shared my pain without permission. I choose to heal without your involvement. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean we go back. I need peace more than family tradition. I wish you well from afar. And she meant every word. If someone has ever exposed you, your pain, your mistakes, your trauma, know this: they don't define your truth. You do. And while forgiveness is noble, it should never be forced. Stoicism gives you permission to walk away, to hold your head high and to say, "You may hold a piece of my past, but I own the rest of my life." Part 3, Chapter of Absence. The sibling who vanished. When you needed them most. Tom sat in the ICU waiting room with a paper cup of cold coffee, watching the night bleed into morning through a window smeared with fingerprints and condensation. His wife was inside, unconscious, fighting for her life after a massive stroke. His hands trembled as he texted his brother Mike. "It's bad. They don't know if she'll make it through the night. Please come." He hit send and waited. An hour passed, then another. No reply, no call, no visit, no presence. And that absence, it screamed louder than any cruel word ever could. Tom and Mike weren't always distant. They were just 2 years apart, inseparable as boys. They built forts in the woods, fought over cereal boxes, and conspired against bedtime. But adulthood has a strange way of thinning those bonds. Tom got married, Mike got divorced twice. Tom stayed close to their aging parents. Mike chased promotions across state lines. They didn't fight, they just faded. But in this moment, this darkest hour, Tom thought surely his brother would show up. He didn't. Not that day, not the next, not even at the funeral 2 weeks later when Tom buried the woman who'd been his rock for 35 years. Mike sent flowers and silence. There are betrayals we expect. Jealousy, lies, even greed. But abandonment during a storm, that's a betrayal wrapped in absence, and somehow it hurts worse. Because it's not what someone did, it's what they didn't do. What they chose not to be when you needed them to be human. The Stoics had a word for this kind of pain. Apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery over emotional disturbance. But Tom wasn't there yet. He was angry. Not in the fiery, destructive way, but in the quiet, sad way that eats away at you. The way that makes you stare at a blank phone screen wondering, why wasn't I worth showing up for? Weeks later, while cleaning the garage, Tom found an old photo album. There was a picture, he and Mike, aged 9 and 11, soaked in mud from head to toe, grinning like fools after a bike race gone wrong. They were covered in bruises and dirt, but laughing. That photo wrecked him, because in it he saw something long buried. The boy who would have never let him face the hard stuff alone. But that boy was gone. So what do you do when your sibling disappears in your pain? When they're not cruel, just absent? When they claim love, but never show up when it counts? This is where Stoic clarity becomes necessary. Seneca once wrote, "A wise man is content with himself. He can be friend to himself even when alone." Tom sat with those words for weeks. He began to see that waiting for Mike's presence was keeping him trapped in a room that no longer existed. He had built a life, held his wife's hand through cancer, raised 2 daughters, comforted friends at funerals. He had shown up every single time. And suddenly he realized he was mourning someone who had already left years ago. Mike wasn't malicious. He was emotionally absent, always had been. He just didn't have the tools. And that wasn't Tom's fault. Tom stopped texting, not in anger, but in release. He stopped expecting closure from someone who'd never learned to open, and in that decision, he reclaimed something powerful, his own presence. He started going to a men's grief group. He talked about his wife. He spoke of his brother once, briefly, and then he let the air swallow the silence. He realized that not every relationship has to end with a bang. Some end with a whisper, a lack, an absence so loud it becomes a presence in itself. Stoic lessons from being abandoned in your hardest hour. Absence is also information. When someone doesn't show up, they're still teaching you something about their capacity, their priorities, and your own strength. Let people be who they are. Protect who you become. The Stoics teach that it's foolish to expect a fig tree to produce olives. Some people will never show up, not because they hate you, but because they're emotionally incapable. Don't rehearse their failure. Reinforce your resilience. Ruminating won't fix the past, but every time you face hardship without them, you prove to yourself you're enough. Tom never erased his brother from his life. He just redefined the space. No more desperate calls, no more waiting at the door, just peace. He still keeps that photo from the bike race on a shelf, not out of pain, but perspective. It reminds him that people change, that absence can teach as much as presence, and that sometimes the person you needed to walk beside you was you all along. If you've ever sat alone in your moment of need, wondering why your sibling vanished, this truth is for you. You didn't deserve the silence, but you don't need their noise to move forward. Your strength doesn't depend on their presence. It lives in your decision to stand, speak, and survive, even when they never showed up. Part 4, Parting of the Blood, Favoritism that Grew into Exile. It often begins with something small, a laugh shared too often with one sibling, a slightly longer glance of pride. A birthday gift is a little more thoughtful, a little more expensive. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. You're being sensitive. You're overthinking it. After all, you're family. Love is supposed to be equal. But over time, the gap widens. One child becomes the golden one, the one whose mistakes are forgiven, whose achievements are paraded around like trophies at family gatherings, who always seems to need more and therefore receives more, while the other fades into the background, ignored, compared, dismissed, until one day the invisible wall becomes so high it feels like exile, and you realize that favoritism hasn't just harmed you, it has dismantled the very idea of family. This is the betrayal that creeps in silently. It doesn't slam a door or scream obscenities. It wounds with absence, with lopsided love, with affection rationed and praise given sparingly. Unless you're the chosen one, the quiet violence of comparison Stoics teach us to master our desires, not to crave approval, not to seek validation, but even the most centered soul is formed in childhood by love, or its lack. Many who were not the favorite carry this invisible grief. You remember school plays where your parents didn't show up, while your sibling had flowers waiting. You recall doing chores without thanks, while your brother got a standing ovation for doing the bare minimum. You grew up with the haunting question, what made me less lovable? This isn't just about attention, it's about dignity. When you're treated as less than consistently, the betrayal begins to shape your view of justice, fairness, and even your own worth. When the family narrative excludes you, some families are run like monarchies, with one crowned child and the rest expected to serve the kingdom. You might find yourself rewritten in family stories. You were always difficult, or you never needed as much help. Slowly, you become the scapegoat or the ghost, a convenient absence that keeps the status quo intact. One man I spoke with, now in his 60s, shared how his younger sister was always favored. She was delicate, he said. They said she needed more, but by the time I was 30, I had nothing left to give, and she had everything. He hadn't spoken to his parents in over a decade, not out of hatred, but self-preservation. Favoritism had made family dangerous. The exile that follows. Sometimes you walk away not because you want to, but because staying means losing yourself. And here lies the greatest wound. When love is conditional, presence becomes painful. And so you exile yourself from the very blood that should have been your shelter. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." But Stoicism never said you must remain where you are, constantly devalued. The Stoic path is not passive endurance of injustice. It's the disciplined pursuit of peace. And sometimes peace means leaving the table where your worth is measured in unfair portions. Forgiveness without reconciliation. There's a Stoic kind of forgiveness, not the kind that demands we welcome toxicity back into our lives, but the kind that frees our hearts from bitterness. Favoritism may never be acknowledged by your parents or siblings. They may go to their graves denying it. But your liberation lies not in their apology, but in your clarity, that you were worthy all along, regardless of their blindness. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. What you can do is become the kind of parent, friend, or sibling who gives fairly, who sees people deeply, who never lets someone wonder if they were loved less. Part 4, Chapter of the Divide, the betrayal that split the family forever. There are moments that change everything, not with an explosion, but with a quiet, irreversible shift. A sentence said too casually, a secret revealed, a decision made behind closed doors, and suddenly, the family that once shared holidays, inside jokes, and childhood bedrooms becomes a collection of strangers, or worse, adversaries. This is the betrayal that doesn't just hurt you, it fractures everyone. It splits a family like a tree struck by lightning, branches scorched, roots shaken, and what once grew together now leans away in different directions, never to meet again. The moment the rift began for some, the divide begins with money, for others with lies. Maybe it was a will, rewritten quietly, excluding one sibling without explanation. Maybe it was a lie told to protect one and bury another. Or perhaps it was a betrayal of trust, a sibling revealing something deeply personal to win favor, or leveraging an aging parent against you. You remember that moment vividly. The call, the confrontation, the discovery. The way voices were raised and then fell into a silence that still echoes. It didn't feel like drama, it felt like grief. A death without a funeral. And worse, it was orchestrated not by an outsider, but by someone who once knew your secrets, who once held your hand crossing the street. Betrayal without bruises. Stoicism teaches us that we must accept what we cannot control, but it also warns us against attaching our peace to anything unstable. And family, for all its beauty, can sometimes be the most unstable of all. Marcus Aurelius said, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." But how do you remain untouched when the betrayal comes from someone who once slept beside you in bunk beds? How do you detach from wounds that are ancestral, emotional, and generational? It is not easy. It is not quick, but it is possible. Stories from the fractured one woman, now in her 50s, shared how her brother secretly sold their late father's land and kept the profits. He said he needed it more, she recalled. And when I asked why he didn't tell me, he said, "You wouldn't have agreed." That single act ended 30 years of closeness. Now they don't speak, not even on holidays. Another man learned that his sister had quietly manipulated their mother into changing the power of attorney. When their mother became ill, decisions were made without him, care withheld, finances drained. She said, "I never cared anyway," he told me, but that was never true. These stories are not rare, and what makes them so painful is not just the betrayal. It's the denial, the refusal to admit wrongdoing, the rewriting of history, the gaslighting that makes you question your memory, your role, your worth. Letting the break stay broken. There's a difficult truth many older adults eventually face. Some divides are not meant to be repaired. Not all family ties are sacred. Not all shared blood demands shared lives. The Stoics would urge us to look inward. What can I control? My response, my boundaries, my peace. They would remind us that we do not need to carry the dysfunction of others simply because we share a name or a childhood. Sometimes the most stoic act of love is separation, not in anger, but in self-respect. Choosing wholeness over reunion. You may always feel that quiet ache, the one that wonders, what if? What if we could fix it? What if I sent a letter? What if I swallowed my pride? But you've tried, or maybe you've already given enough. And now the chapter must close, not out of cruelty, but wisdom. The betrayal that split your family may never be undone, but it doesn't have to define you. You are still whole, even if the family is not. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." This divide, painful as it is, may be the very trial through which you become someone clearer, stronger, more compassionate. You are not broken. You are simply choosing peace over war. The silent breaking point when the soul finally says, enough. There is a moment in every story, every real betrayal, when the noise stops. No more shouting, no more explanations, no more apologies rehearsed in your mind that never arrive. Just silence, heavy, resolute, final. This is not the dramatic climax seen in movies. There's no confrontation at a family dinner or a tearful reunion in the rain. Instead, the true climax of betrayal is internal, quiet. It comes like a slow sunrise, barely noticeable at first, until suddenly the whole sky has changed color. It's the moment you stop waiting for them to change. It's the moment your soul whispers, "This chapter is done." 1,000 little cuts before the final blow. Most betrayals don't kill a relationship in one strike. They weaken it over time, through dismissive comments, half-truths, broken promises, and quiet acts of disrespect. Each one chips away at the foundation. You tell yourself to be patient, to understand, to forgive. You think of the holidays, the shared parents, the childhood photos still tucked in your drawers. But one day, sometimes after years of enduring, something inside shifts. Maybe it's a text they never replied to. Maybe it's your mother's funeral where they didn't show. Maybe it's just the realization that you feel anxious every time their name appears on your phone. You realize you're not just hurt anymore. You're tired. And that fatigue, that deep emotional exhaustion, is a boundary forming inside you. A natural wall rising not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. The Stoic break. The Stoics never promised a life free of betrayal, only the ability to respond with strength and clarity when it comes. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone does wrong, the harm is to themselves. Do not join them in their mistake." This is the heart of the breaking point, realizing that you don't need to correct, confront, or fix them. You simply need to exit the cycle. You stop asking why they did it. You stop wondering what if you'd said something different. You stop sacrificing your peace for a loyalty that was never mutual. You don't stop loving them, that's not always possible, but you stop allowing that love to cost you everything else. Liberation through acceptance. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. You finally see the situation and them as they are, not as who you hoped they'd be. And in that seeing, you are free. Free from chasing approval. Free from explaining your pain to people who refuse to hear it. Free from waiting at a door that will never open again. This is the Stoic climax. Not vengeance, but release. Not closure from them, but peace within you. When the soul says, "Enough," believe it. So many people ignore this voice. They go back, they beg, they reopen old wounds, hoping for different outcomes. And every time, they leave more broken than before. But not you. You've heard the voice. You've felt the shift. Now comes the courage to honor it. This is the moment your healing begins. Not because they apologized, but because you no longer need them to. You are no longer at war with your past. You are no longer hostage to the actions of those who chose betrayal over love. You have survived the fracture and chosen wholeness anyway. When blood fails, philosophy remains. In the end, betrayal from a sibling cuts deeper than most. It's not just a broken promise, it's a broken identity. You grew up under the same roof, shared meals, laughter, and tears. You thought that bond was unbreakable, but betrayal doesn't ask for permission. It arrives quietly or explodes suddenly, and either way, it leaves you different, changed, sometimes hardened, and sometimes awakened. Each of the stories we've explored, the inheritance turned battlefield, the secrets weaponized, the silent abandonments, the poison of favoritism, the final family fracture, all lead to one undeniable truth. Sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you are the ones you must protect yourself from. This is not a call to bitterness. This is a call to wisdom. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot control who betrays us, we can control how we respond. Betrayal is not the end of your story, but it is the moment when your real growth begins. Marcus Aurelius taught that we must accept whatever comes to us, woven in the pattern of our destiny, for what could more aptly fit our needs. Even betrayal, as painful as it is, can reveal the strength we didn't know we had. It teaches us to set boundaries, to walk away when staying only deepens the wound, to find family not only in blood, but in those who treat us with honor. If you've been betrayed by a sibling, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You're becoming whole in a different way, not by fixing the past, but by forging forward with clarity, dignity, and peace. You were never meant to carry the weight of betrayal forever. You were meant to learn from it and then let it go. Keep walking the Stoic path with us. If this video touched a part of your story, if you recognized the weight of betrayal, the silence of absence, or the pain of favoritism, then know this: you are not alone, and your healing matters. But don't stop here. There is more to uncover, more to reflect on, and more to strengthen within yourself. On this channel, The Stoic Philosophy, we dive deep into timeless teachings, life-changing lessons, and real, relatable stories that speak directly to your heart and mind. So if you're ready to continue growing in peace, resilience, and self-mastery, watch another video now. Whether it's about emotional control, letting go of anger, or finding clarity in difficult relationships, let each video guide you one step further on your journey. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you won't miss any of the powerful content we share every week, built specifically for people like you who seek truth, wisdom, and calm in a noisy world. Your presence here means more than you know. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your trust to this message. It's an honor to walk this path with you. May you continue to grow stronger in stillness, wiser in pain, and kinder in power. Until we meet again, stay grounded, stay free, stay true.
Thank you for watching this video here on the Stoic Philosophy. If you found value in this, I invite you to explore more videos on the channel. There's so much more wisdom to uncover. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.